I never thought of myself as someone who needed rescuing, not from a burning building, not from a bad marriage, not from the particular kind of slow suffocation that looks, from the outside, like a perfectly managed life. But at 11:47 on a Tuesday night, suspended somewhere between the 14th and 15th floors of a building I had worked in for 9 years, I stopped moving for the first time in longer than I could remember, and something I had been outrunning for years finally caught up with me. His name was Daniel, and he didn't try to fix it. That's the part I keep coming back to. The thing that undid me wasn't what he said. It was what he didn't do. The alarm button was right there, 8 inches from his left hand. And he looked at it, and then he looked at me. And then he folded his arms across his chest and leaned back against the wall like a man with nowhere better to be. "Sometimes it resets on its own," he said. "Give it a minute." I gave it 53. "Stay with me until the very end. What happens when the doors finally open? That's the part I've been afraid to tell anyone. I had stayed late to finish the Mercer proposal. 3rd time that month. My assistant had gone home at 7. The floor had gone quiet by 8, and by 10 it was just me and the particular hum of a building pretending to be asleep. I was the last one on the 14th floor. I knew this the way you know things in an empty building. The sounds change. The air sits differently. I stepped into the elevator at 20 to midnight with my coat over one arm and my laptop bag cutting into my shoulder, and my mind still running the numbers, still drafting the 3rd paragraph of Section 2, still doing what I always did, which was carry the whole thing myself, right up until I physically could not. He was already inside. I noticed him the way you notice something unexpectedly still in a room full of motion. He was tall, unhurried-looking, with the kind of posture that suggested he had made peace with whatever room he happened to be standing in. He was holding a rolled-up set of architectural drawings loosely in one hand. His jacket was charcoal. He had the shadow of a beard that had not been a decision so much as a conclusion. We exchanged the standard elevator nod, the small wordless treaty between two strangers agreeing to briefly share a contained space and ask nothing of each other. The doors closed. The elevator rose. And then it didn't. There was a lurch, soft, almost apologetic, and then stillness. The kind of stillness that takes a moment to register as wrong because stillness is what elevators are full of when they're working, and then the numbers above the door stop changing. 14. Still 14. The floor we had just left. I pressed 15. Nothing. I pressed the lobby button. Nothing. I reached for the alarm. "Hold on," he said. I turned. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't even particularly concerned. He was watching the panel with a thoughtful expression, the way a person watches a cat sitting in an unusual place, mildly curious, not alarmed. "I've been in this building 3 weeks," he said. "This elevator hesitates sometimes, usually resets in a minute or two. You've been stuck in this elevator before?" Stuck is a strong word. The corner of his mouth moved. "I'd say we've had a disagreement." I looked at the alarm button. I looked at him. I had 17 things I still needed to do before morning, and this was not one of them. "Give it 2 minutes," he said. "If it hasn't moved, I'll call it." I set my bag down. It hit the floor with more relief than I intended. 2 minutes passed, then 5. Neither of us pressed the alarm. I'm still not entirely sure why. I've thought about it enough times since that the answer has gotten complicated. What I know is that he sat down on the floor first, just folded himself down against the back wall, those long legs extended, completely unbothered, and something about the absolute lack of performance in it made my chest loosen by a fraction, like permission I hadn't known I was waiting for. I sat down too. Not beside him, not yet. Near the corner, my back against the wall, a careful 4 feet of elevator carpet between us. "Long night?" he asked. "They're all long nights." He nodded like that was an answer he recognized. His name was Daniel. He was a structural consultant, buildings, load assessments, the architecture of things meant to hold weight. He'd been contracted to the 16th floor for a retrofit assessment. He traveled a lot. He lived in hotel rooms the way some people live in houses, efficiently, without complaint. "Do you like it?" I asked. "The traveling." He thought about it genuinely. I noticed that. The pause before he spoke, like he actually considered the question instead of reaching for the nearest acceptable answer. "I did," he said. "For a long time it felt like freedom. Now it mostly feels like—" He turned the rolled drawings over in his hands once, like being very good at leaving. I didn't say anything. There was something in that sentence that required a moment of silence. He seemed to know it, and he gave it. "What about you?" he said. "Is this what you wanted? The late nights? The proposals?" No one had asked me that in years, possibly ever, in exactly that form. Not how is it going or what's next, but is this what you wanted? I don't know, I said, and I meant it so completely that the honesty of it surprised me. I think I wanted to be good at something. I didn't particularly think about what it would cost. He looked at me steadily, not with pity, with something more careful than that. Recognition, maybe. The face of someone who understood the accounting. What was the first thing, he asked. The first thing you decided didn't matter that much, that you'd get back to. I stared at the space between us. I could feel the answer sitting in my chest like something heavy and patient. Sleep, I said finally. And then I stopped calling my sister back as quickly, and then I stopped. You're a stranger on a stopped elevator. I am, he agreed, which means in about 20 minutes we'll either be rescued or you'll never have to see me again. Either way, you're safe. That was the moment, the one I keep returning to. Not a touch, not a look, just that sentence, delivered without drama, without agenda. Either way, you're safe. I hadn't felt safe in so long that the word hit me somewhere unexpected, like pressure applied to a bruise I'd forgotten I had. We talked for 40 minutes, not about work, not about productivity or growth or vertical alignment or any of the language I had been living inside for so long that I'd stopped noticing it wasn't the language of actual human beings. He talked about his daughter, 9 years old, already funnier than him, lived with her mother in Edinburgh. He talked about a building he'd assessed in Lisbon that had been standing for 240 years, and the way the walls had shifted over time to accommodate the earth beneath them. The whole structure had just adapted, he said, without anyone asking it to, without any plan, it just found a way to stay standing. He was quiet for a moment after that. I don't think he meant it as a metaphor, but it landed like one. I talked about my sister. I talked about the last genuinely unscheduled afternoon I could remember, which was 3 years ago, which was the afternoon of my father's funeral, which said something about me I wasn't entirely prepared to examine in a stopped elevator with a man I had met 50 minutes ago. He didn't try to fix that either. He just received it, set it down gently somewhere between us, and let it be what it was. At some point, the 4 feet of carpet between us had become 2. I don't know when it happened. Neither of us had moved deliberately. The space had simply narrowed, the way spaces do when conversation warms them. His shoulder was close enough that I could feel the warmth of it. I was aware of this the way you are aware of a candle in a dark room, not alarming, not requiring action, just present. Real. There. I haven't talked like this in years, I said. Talked like this to anyone. Neither have I. He said it without performance. It was simply true. I looked at him. He was looking at the opposite wall, and then he turned and looked at me, and there was a moment, one of those moments that has a particular texture, the kind you can feel on your skin the way you feel a change in the weather, where neither of us looked away. His eyes were darker than I'd registered. There was something in them that was paying very careful attention. I was the one who looked down first. We should probably call, I said. My voice came out quieter than I'd planned. Probably, he said. Neither of us moved. The moment extended. The elevator held its breath. I was aware of my own breathing, of the warmth of him, of the particular quality of silence in that small, suspended space. A silence that was not empty but full, absolutely full, of everything neither of us was saying. And then his hand, resting on the floor between us, shifted half an inch toward mine. Not reaching, just shifting, just existing slightly closer than it had a moment before. I looked at it. I looked at him. He was watching me with an expression that asked nothing and offered everything, and I understood then what it felt like to be seen, not managed, not assessed, not scheduled, but seen, the way you are when someone looks at you and finds you actually interesting, actually worth the time, actually there. I turned my hand over, his closed around it, just that, just his hand, warm and certain around mine, in a stopped elevator between floors, at 11 minutes past midnight. We stayed like that for a long time. The elevator moved. It was so gradual at first that I thought I imagined it, a small hum returning to the walls, a faint vibration through the floor. And then the number above the door changed, 15, and then 16, and the elevator climbed, unhurried, as if it had simply been thinking things over and had finally reached a conclusion. We felt it at the same time. I know we did. Neither of us had to say it. The lobby button was already pressed. I didn't remember pressing it. Perhaps he had, sometime before. The elevator descended. Smooth, ordinary. The aluminum doors reflected back 2 people sitting on the floor of an elevator, one of them still holding the other's hand. We stood when it reached the lobby, slowly. The way you move when you've been somewhere for a long time and returning to the ordinary world requires a small adjustment. The doors opened. We stood in the open mouth of the elevator and did not immediately move through it. The lobby was empty except for the night security guard at the far end, reading something on his phone. The building was quiet. The city beyond the glass was doing what cities do at midnight, carrying on without us, indifferent and brilliant and lit. Daniel looked at me. He had let go of my hand when we stood, but the absence of it was its own kind of pressure. "The Mercer proposal," he said. "Section 2, third paragraph." I stared at him. "I was thinking about it when I got in the elevator." "I know, you were moving your lips." Something loosened in my chest that I hadn't realized was still clenched. "There's a cafe 2 blocks east," he said. "It's open until 2. I looked at him for a long moment. The doors were still open behind us, the elevator patient, unbothered, holding the threshold. "I have 17 things to do before 9, I said. "I know." A pause. "The cafe," I said. 2 blocks east. 2 blocks east, he said. We walked out of the building together. The night air was cooler than I expected, and it hit my face like something I hadn't known I'd been missing. Sharp and clear and entirely unscheduled. My laptop bag was still on my shoulder. His drawings were tucked under his arm. We didn't touch. We didn't need to. There was something between us now that didn't require maintenance, didn't require management, didn't require any of the constant tending that had swallowed so many of my years. It simply was. Quiet and certain and already mine. I have thought about that walk 1,000 times since then, the way the streetlights looked, the way my own footsteps sounded different, lighter somehow, less like someone carrying the whole thing herself. I had forgotten what it felt like to not know what came next. I had forgotten that not knowing could feel like a door opening rather than a floor giving way. I've learned since then that the things that change you most rarely announce themselves. They don't come dressed as turning points. They come as a mechanical failure, a hesitation, a man leaning back against the wall of a stopped elevator with nowhere better to be, and the small, extraordinary grace of not pressing the alarm just yet. Have you ever had a moment where everything stopped? Not because it had to, but because some part of you finally let it? I think about that night sometimes, and I wonder how many of those moments I've walked past without recognizing them. How many elevators I've pressed the alarm in before giving it even 1 minute. If this story found something in you tonight, a feeling you recognized, a moment you remembered, I'd love to know. Leave a comment below. And if you want more stories that sit with you long after they're over, you know what to do. I'll be here.